You're listening to the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast, brought to you by BuildTurbines.com. Learn, train, and be a part of the clean energy revolution. Visit BuildTurbines.com today. Now here's your hosts, Alan Hall, Joel Saxum, Phil Totaro, and Rosemary Barnes.
Welcome to the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Hall, and I'm here with Joel Saxum, who's up in Wisconsin. Joel, you've had some really cold weather up there the last couple of days. It's still September.
Doesn't really make sense, Alan. I don't know. It's September, beginning of September. And this morning when I let the dog out at 5:20 a.m., whatever time she decided to wake me up, it was 36 degrees here. That's way too cold. I know I went up here to escape a little bit of heat from in Texas, but I did not look to frost advisories and like sweatshirts and vests and boots. But that's what's happening. Yeah, even a few red leaves floating around in the lawn up here. So winter or fall is coming. That means, you know what fall coming means is blade season for repairs in the Northern Hemisphere is slowing down or shutting down shortly. So we're going to get to hear what happened, maybe a post-mortem, hopefully, on the blade repair season in North America.
Yeah, it's been busy from what I could tell. And plus, there's a lot of construction going on new wind sites. There's all kinds of turbines being planted right now. We're going to be working through the end of the year easily if the weather will support it. Very active time at the moment. And speaking of active time, this is our second take of this podcast. Just because so much has happened since we recorded last evening, Joel and I thought we ought to take another try or attempt at this, try to give you the most updated information. Not to say it's not going to change over the next couple of hours after we finish this podcast, but the administration has launched its most aggressive attack on America's offshore wind industry. The federal government is now working to withdraw permits for New England Wind 1 and 2 off the coast of Massachusetts. Now, these projects were valued at roughly $14.6 billion by Bloomberg NEF and will power more than 900,000 homes. But the issue really is, why are they being shut down? Nobody really knows. And there's a lot of conjecture about it. And Joel, you and I were just talking before we recorded here. It may have something to do with Denmark.
Yeah, I think you want to believe that smoother minds will prevail, that logic and pragmatism is a part of government. But what it really seems is there's favoritism and there's egos and there's feelings driving some of these decisions. All right. Today we just heard or just read that the Danish government is in California signing a policy agreement for collaboration with Gavin Newsom and the administration out there. And this is on top of we would like Greenland and this Danish fight and all these different things happening between the two organizations or the two countries there. So it's just kind of like posturing and we're back and forth. And Ørsted is the big Danish company, right? So the people who are close to Ørsted, i.e. the Danish government, come back and poke the bear in the side a little bit more. So it just seems like there's a lot of egos and things going on. And that's why it's hard to make sense out of, right? So like, why is this happening? There's no real reasons that we're being told as the general public, right? Like there's this veiled kind of, there might be a national security thing here, why we would cancel these projects. But at the end of the day, like it's unprecedented. I mean, there's billions and billions of dollars sunk into these projects. And what's the recourse? Like if they get canceled, that Ørsted and or their partners are just out? Like, how can you cancel a project in an offshore capacity that's 80% complete? Doesn't make sense.
Right. So Revolution Wind was shut down a week or two ago at this point, and that happened immediately after Denmark, the Prime Minister of Denmark and the delegation from Denmark met with Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, and then boom, Revolution Wind is shut down, and now New England Wind 1 and 2, which is an avant-grid project, are in the same boat. So basically, it triggered a series of events, or at least it appears that way at the moment. It appears to have triggered a number of events, and this also includes withdrawing about $679 million in federal funding from 12 infrastructure projects that are supporting offshore wind development. The single largest loss is Humboldt Bay offshore wind in Northern California. Again, another Gavin Newsom thing, which is going to lose $427 million in federal support. And in Norfolk, Virginia, the Fairwinds Landing facility supporting Dominion's coastal Virginia offshore wind project lost $39 million. So now the administration has threatened or blocked about 8 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity, which is a tremendous number of homes that we would have powered. This is starting to get to a little bit unsettling. So the news out of the New York Times last night, as we're recording this, said I think 6 administration departments have been asked to go find ways to threaten or stop offshore wind. So it's all the way to the top. Joel, it just feels like this is personal for some reason, and I don't know how it got to this level, but it is becoming a little more irrational than it was maybe even 6 weeks ago. And I know Phil was really upset about it 6 weeks ago, and I genuinely agree. Like some of the comments coming out of the administration are on, I would I would say they were bonkers, maybe is the right term, just being polite, but unfounded maybe is a really good term. And now it's like really escalated.
I think that the general public, so there's a couple ways to look at it. In my mind, I'm looking, is the hydrocarbon lobby this strong, right? I know they're strong, right? I'm an ex-oil and gas guy. I lived in Houston, the energy capital of the world, all these things, and was a part of that infrastructure for a long time. So I know the things that they can get done if they want to get done. Are they strong enough to turn the tides of an entire, basically like Western Hemisphere's energy production? Because that's what it's looking like, right? Like the changes that they're so extreme here have waterfalling and cascading effects to all of the other economies around us. You're seeing investment possibly pouring into Canada, offshore wind there. So that's changing their economy, changing our economy. You'll see these things like they're not just going to affect here in the U.S. These moves will affect globally, and you've seen it being pushed over to like these trade groups going to from the U.S. going to the U.K. going to Europe. You know, stop building wind. You need LNG. So you can hear this undertone of hydrocarbon industry, LNG, oil and gas, drill baby drill, getting pushed. Is that lobby so strong that they've changed this? I don't know if that's the case. I know that's part of it, but it does feel like it's this ego thing, right? Because you have this engagement of every, like you said, all of these different departments within the federal government. They're being told, do this, do this, do this. And again, I want to say this to the general public, if you don't know these things, like, so Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, he's the head of basically the federal DOT. The federal DOT is in charge of ports. So whenever you would go into a port facility, you need what's called a TWIC card, Transportation Worker Identification Card. And that's a background check on you to make sure that you're okay within national interests to enter these facilities. Those ports are exactly where we will be operating offshore wind out of. They're the same places where we bring in goods and services from other countries and do trade deals and all these different things. It's the working part of our economy, or the maritime side of it, right? So because the federal government has control of these, they can do what they want at these port facilities, regardless of state wants. So what does the administration do? They direct the Transportation Secretary to go pull funding from the ports in California that will directly affect the local economies, the jobs, that offshore wind build out, and some of these projects that are already ongoing. They've already done things. Like there's already shovels moving dirt on some of those sites. So you see this power that they have, and that they're moving and grooving to be able to basically put a stranglehold on offshore wind in the United States. It is the term you used, Alan, unnerving. I know a couple months ago when some of this stuff started to roll out, we were like, nothing's really going to happen. Stay the course. Everything's cool. But it's starting to get some big time things happening, right? There's going to be some lawsuits flying around here.
Well, yeah. And today lawsuits really started flying. We figured at some point one of the developers was going to file a lawsuit, or the states were going to file a lawsuit, and all of the above has just happened. So Rhode Island and Connecticut and project developer Ørsted and Skyborne Renewables are going to challenge the administration's halt of the Revolution Wind project. Now, there's a lot going on behind the scenes, so you're just hearing dribs and drabs at this point. But basically, the lawsuit says there's process violations. Now, those sound arcane, like, oh, it's a process violation, no big deal. Well, it is a big deal because there's so much money behind it, and it affects so many jobs. It's thousands of jobs. And in this particular case, with Revolution Wind and with Empire Wind, the rationale for why they shut those projects off was not defined. And the press went to go find the exact reason, did a Freedom of Information Act and got the document, but everything was redacted on the Empire Wind side, so they couldn't even tell. And my guess is that Ørsted is still waiting to hear the real issue. Like, is there a legal issue that was a rationale for BOEM to shut off Revolution Wind? And I think the answer is probably no. It's more like it's a national interest problem. We have defense problems with these wind turbines being in the water. That is usually not enough to trigger a stoppage. So unless somebody pushes back, the administration can continue to do this. My guess is that the states, knowing that, and a lot of those people have worked in Washington, D.C., and they all have good attorneys, particularly up in the Northeast. There's a lot of attorneys in the Northeast, are easily going to file some sort of lawsuit getting the administration to stop. Now, Joel, I think the question is, what happens next? Will the administration stop and try to negotiate some deal, or will it just get more combative where both sides just start throwing rocks at each other?
You've pinpointed the two things, right? And one problem I see there is if a deal isn't struck, this is the art of the deal, right? This is what he's been doing to other countries, come in strong arm and then go, oh, you don't like that? Let's negotiate something. Maybe get something that we want, right? Come in with a high price, even though you know you want this one and you could settle for that. That's probably what's going to happen. Now, and that's in my opinion, right? But if that doesn't, the trouble here is that we're now tied up in a legal process. Legal processes can drag and drag and drag and drag forever, right? So you drag this out long enough where the pain gets to be so heavy that eventually people have to cut their losses or eat some of the costs here, or something has to happen in a negative way. The trouble with that is either of these outcomes, to be honest with you, what we have done is made investing in the United States risky, right? By having a situation where you can't, as an outside investor, you can't count on things, right? It would just be like if you were going to buy a new car and all of a sudden you were basically taking ownership of the car, and then they changed the terms of the loan or told you couldn't drive it, only but Tuesday nights or something of that sort. Like this, I don't want that anymore. I'm not going to invest in that. So there isn't a really, I guess, in my opinion, what's happening here. I'm hoping for the best, right? But what looks like the writing on the wall is like, it's just not a good outcome for offshore wind in the United States.
I think the banter that's going back and forth is the Keystone XL pipeline was shut down, and just out of the blue, LNG ports were all shut down, like immediately. Boom, there's an order, everything stops. So now it's retribution, it's payback time. We're going to flex the other way and watch what we can do with our pen and our phone. Like, okay, both sides need to stop this nonsense because 330 million Americans are caught in the middle. And cutting electricity off in some sense, reducing the supply of electricity, which is what is about to happen, is going to be a huge problem. And I don't know if anybody is paying attention to the political ramifications of this. Not that I trust analysts, honestly. I do a lot of the homework myself. But analysts are predicting that electricity prices are going to bump up, and not in small amounts. It'll be very noticeable. It's one thing about Americans. They know what the price of gas is. They know what the price of electricity is. And they know the price of eggs and milk, right? Those are bread, are the key consumer items. If any of those start to fluctuate on any grand scale more than a couple percentage points, there's hell to pay as a politician. And I Just curious as to what Congress is thinking right now. Like, how long is this going to go on before there's retribution, payback from my constituents? Do I lose my seat? Maybe they're willing to do that, but it doesn't seem like anybody is upset about it right yet.
You've already seen posturing on that exact topic, though. You've already seen senior level people in the administration say, "Oh, prices are going to go up, and we're going to get blamed for it, even though it was the last administration's fault." That makes you see that, like, that's what's happening right now, but that doesn't make sense, right? Because when you look at these are simple economics. This is economics 101, supply and demand, right? You're cutting supply. Demand is increasing. We know this, 1 to 3%. I think last year the number was 2.5%, which is a record since decades, right? And that's only going to get more and more extreme as we start to build more of these AI data centers, things that we, as the consumers of the electricity, are also the consumers of the AI data centers. We're driving that demand ourselves. So, like, basically we're standing and digging dirt and then throwing it on our own feet is what's happening. And there is a mechanism to lift us out of this, more generation on the grid. And that's being canceled at the same time that we're also shutting down coal plants and stuff. So we're trying to decarbonize. We're making moves away from this, but there's just these simple equations. This is not PhD level stuff. I can do this in a bar napkin for you. Like, we're not in a good place as far as energy generation goes. And the demand is so high that I think when we were talking with Phil last night, I completely agree with him. You're going to start to see more behind the grid projects popping up because the people with the deep pockets need this generation, need power generation, and they're not going to be stopped by some organization that is, FERC or a NERC or someone like that they have to answer to. They want, if the business case makes sense to power these data centers, they're going to make power and they're going to make it happen. They're just not going to deal with the garbage going on politically. That's my take. Now, you can't do that in offshore wind because that's federal government waters. It'd be the same thing as if you were trying to do that on BLM federal lands and onshore. You're not going to be able to do that. But if you can do it on private land, that's going to happen.
Well, when we come back from the break, I want to talk about the onshore piece of this because I think the next phase of the movements against wind involve onshore. Are you worried about unexpected blade root failures and the high cost of repairs? Meet EcoPitch by Onyx Insight, the standard in blade root monitoring. Onyx's state-of-the-art sensor tracks blade root movement in real time, delivering continuous data to keep your wind farm running smoothly and efficiently. With EcoPitch, you can catch problems early, saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. Field tested on over 3,000 blades, it's proven reliability at your fingertips. Choose EcoPitch for peace of mind. Contact Onyx Insight today to schedule your demo of EcoPitch and experience the future of blade monitoring. Joel, last night we were talking about the impacts of the move against offshore wind, but it also seems like there's been action taking for onshore wind, including proximity to railroads, proximity to infrastructure, the Eagles.
Migratory Bird Act.
Yeah, the Migratory Bird Act, and there's others. I mean, I'm sure the administration is scouring the rule books and law books looking for other things to poke at. One of the things that has been discussed, at least in the press in several different areas, is permits for private land where wind or solar will be installed. What permits does the Fed have to issue for those projects?
Well, it all depends on what the interconnect is, right? So if I want to put a wind turbine on the top of my house, I have to abide by FAA rules, right? So that'd have to be under 500 feet because 500 feet's the limit there. I may, depending on my jurisdiction, right, if there's rules in place, which here there isn't, but of course, like in Texas and Iowa and places there is, setbacks from property lines, right? In Texas, they tried to just pass a law that was 3,000 foot setbacks to wind turbines from a property line, which essentially makes you have to have a 6,050 foot wide piece of property to put one turbine in the middle, which is ridiculous. To have a piece of property over a mile across. That didn't pass either way, but there's certain rules of those types. Now, if you want to be behind the grid, you don't have to. You don't have to abide by all of the NERC rulings, the FERC rulings, whatever your operator is, the MISO, the ERCOT, the PJM. You don't have to abide by that stuff if you're behind the grid. You just have to abide by a much simpler set of rules. However, as this starts to take place, I could see some lawsuits popping up in certain jurisdictions about that as well. And it's those lawsuits that are like they're really kind of complicated. It's you're messing up the value of my property because I have to look at your turbine. Then the countersuing party comes back and says, well, this is eminent domain because it's good for public use for the data center that it's powering and these kind of things. That becomes a long drawn out legal battle.
I think it'll be many years. And if the administration defers and all that and says, oh, we agree with the plaintiff in the case. Sure. Right. And which can happen. Right. And this is what's happening on offshore wind at the minute, that any legal case brought against offshore wind against the federal government, the administration saying we surrender. You're right. Sure. We'll pull the permits to satisfy this lawsuit.
The trouble here, like right from the wind industry, i.e. us, our constituents, our friends, our colleagues, everybody around, is why? What's happening here? Like the Empire Wind thing that got pulled, got reinstated without changes.
No changes to the outcome of that project. Right. And there's no layout changes. There's no cabling changes. At least from what we have seen, we haven't seen any changes at all.
Yeah. So what's the deal, right? Like it's just like, again, it's a negotiation tool. It's something, there's something going on there that just doesn't make sense.
It doesn't extrude maximum pain when you have jackup vessels and several hundred people out on the water. That's a time where it hurts the most, when you're almost done, not permitted in making power, but just before then is the time of most pain, because all the money has been pouring out and now you're just adding fuel to the fire every day the jackup vessel sits there.
Well, I think there's a nationalist play here too, because we discussed this a couple of years ago. Even I think it was when the New York bite happened, and then again when the California or the West Coast auctions happened. None of the companies that won those auctions were U.S.-based companies, because U.S.-based companies don't have experience in developing offshore wind. So they had to be a minority partner or something of that sort. So I think that could be a part of the play too. Like, okay, we alluded to this possibility of, the administration pulling one over on Denmark because of Ørsted. But now the one company that has that is U.S. owned, which is Dominion Energy, that has coastal Virginia offshore wind, they're under a microscope now.
Oh, I would say so, yeah.
I almost guarantee it. I would say in the next few weeks, they'll have something pop. Well, you were going to hear something pop up about that wind farm where they're pulling a permit or reviewing something or whatever, but the administration is going to cause pain to them as well.
So what are we doing on onshore, Joel? And what are the companies that are involved in onshore wind, of which there's 75-ish thousand turbines in the U.S. at the moment, and a lot of wind farms being built, honestly? There are big, huge EPCs that are putting turbines up right now that have hundreds of millions of dollars invested in cranes and people and infrastructure and tools and all that. And then you get down to the small companies like WeatherGuard, honestly. We're probably as small as you can get in wind, quite honestly. And then there's everybody in the middle. ISPs, there's all the technology companies, there's all the tax advisors, all of the multiple levels of people, engineering companies that are all involved in wind from beginning to end. What are they going to be doing? What is the plan of attack there? How do you address this kind of threat to the industry?
If you follow what the analysts say, again, if you trust the analyst companies, if you trust these consultants that are saying, that are looking in crystal balls and predicting the future, what you see is a massive, we're talking wind now, not all renewables. You see a massive slowdown in greenfield development in 28, right? We know that there's going to be a push. It's big time right now. We've been on sites in the last month, right? It's blowing and going. We got cranes everywhere. We got people everywhere. EPCs are scrambling to get stuff done. So that the industry is moving forward in an efficient and safe manner to get as many of these projects built as they can before these, cliffs show up in front of us. So, but either way, we have this window where the EPC contractors, the feed study engineering companies, the environmental review companies, all of the people that are associated with greenfield are going to be super, super, super busy. My advice to them would be parlay all the profit you make right now, all the margin you're scraping right now into O&M services, because you just don't know. You can't see the future of what it's going to look like beyond 27 into 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. I would expect in my heart of hearts that we're back up and running and building greenfield development shortly after this administration. However, nobody can guarantee that. So I would if I was involved in as an EPC, as a TFA type small ISP that does the technical field advising for construction, I would use all of the might you have right now and all of the cash reserves you're building to open up another revenue silo of your business to do operations and maintenance, because that will continue, right? We've got 75,000 and change turbines in the ground. And by the end of the next year and a half, 2 years, that number will probably be 76, 77,000, maybe 78 if we're lucky. So those services are still going to be needed. I think that in the next year, because leading up to that, you're going to see some market consolidation. I believe that we'll start to see some more M&A activity in wind, pushing from the big guys down. You're going to see the larger groups that are multifaceted already or are looking to be more multifaceted, grabbing the specialist smaller companies, grabbing blade company with 30 techs, that kind of stuff, right? Or those kind of things they're going to be up for sale. We're going to see some of that happening for sure. We've already seen some of the operators start to size down their development groups, and repowers being accomplished on the project management side by people who aren't necessarily CapEx project management type people, because these companies don't want to bring those new resources on. They're just like, you know what, we've got some repowers to get done. Let's just get it done with the staff we have, or hire a consultant to come in and help us with this, because we don't want to bolster and build this division of repowering and construction if we don't know what the future looks like. This is more, I'm speaking onshore here, right? Offshore wise, some people will, unfortunately, some people are going to lose their jobs. We've seen that happen already. We've seen some massive amounts of layoffs in the offshore world. So it's not awesome, but there is going to be some long-term projects and some long-term things that will stay in place, and those people will stay around. But either way, I would say onshore wise and offshore, gear up. And this is a global thing for me, but gear up for O&M as the fleet grows. It's still going to need to be maintained.
It's important words of wisdom there. I think everybody needs to be looking at their books at the minute, understanding how their business is operating, where they can get a little bit leaner over the next few months, and keep your ear to the ground. Don't assume all this is going to get washed under the rug and it's all going to go away in a couple months. I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to be at least another 18 months of fun times like we've just had over the last 6 months, where who knows what's going to happen. But you're right, Joel. I think the opportunity in sites that are not connected to the grid, that are powering AI, data centers all over the place. I think you're going to see activity there, solar, wind, batteries, all the above. That's cheap, quick to install, and does the job, or what's going to happen. And that may change your business, may change your outlook, but I think you need to be watching for that closely. And then, like Joel said, expanding your horizons. Figure out where there's other opportunities.
We did have, I want to share this with our listeners. I had a large operator reach out to me just this week and say, hey, I know at Uptime, we've talked with you guys before. We know you have a large network of people, and some of the innovative solutions that are out there, some of the new technologies, some of the new even software solutions. We are in the process of basically doing a deep dive into what is out there in the wind world, what can help us shave some money off, make our operations more efficient, guarantee or increase uptime, like all of these little things, right? Like the products like the strike tapes of the world, or we've been doing these webinars with SkySpec, some of the software solutions they have that can, monitor things, keep things healthier, optimize your O&M strategy. And this was a company that was like, we have an initiative as a group, as an engineering team, we need to go out to the market, find all of these solutions so that we can make our operations look better as we go. And I think that that's just the first of those phone calls we're going to get. I think that that's going to become quite the trend here in the next year.
Yeah, we're connected. And I think maybe you don't think a podcast is really connected to the underbelly of an industry, but we know where the technology exists because we've talked to them. They may not even been on the show, but we have talked to them. Usually, it's hard for a good technology company to miss the Uptime Wind Energy podcast. And Joel, you're right. It has happened a couple of times, but I think it's going to happen more often. And we've been offering that, honestly. If you need to know where the technology is or where others have taken advantage of a technology, call us. We'd be glad to share that information with you.
Give us your problem statement.
Yeah, we're trying to promote the industry. This is the whole reason this podcast exists, is to get the industry to connect to itself. It's a global industry. There's a lot of cool things happening all over the world. We're trying to highlight them and bring them out because they're hard to find. Quite honestly, Joel, you and I talk about this all the time. Some of the coolest technologies don't have the best websites, so you can't find them on LinkedIn, and it's hard to search for them, and they don't really show up in ChatGPT. But once they're on the podcast, they're searchable. And now you can take a deep look and go, oh, there's a couple of companies doing what I was looking for. And let me call them and let me talk to the person I saw on the podcast. That's the way it's done. And so if you talk to operators that have used the podcast properly, that's what they do. They're connecting up and getting those answers faster and getting to the right people in those companies immediately instead of trying to connect, spend months at this or taking hours, minutes to do it. It's a smart move.
If you've got questions about anything, joel.saxon@wglightning.com. Always happy to respond, or shoot me a message on LinkedIn, because a quick connection to something may ease a lot of pain. And like Alan said, this is why we do the podcast. We're fans of wind energy. We want it to succeed. And we are collectively, at least in the U.S., under fire right now. So whatever we can do to help each other out, we're here for.
That wraps another episode of the Uptime Wind Energy Podcast. Thanks for joining us as we explore the latest in wind energy technology and industry insights. If today's discussion sparked any questions or ideas, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us on LinkedIn. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's conversation, please leave us a review. It really helps other wind energy professionals discover the show.